Welcome back, and we're now starting on the final leg of our presentations this afternoon. We have two presentations coming up shortly. The first is by Mirador Media. Many people have been asking us over the last 6 months to a year as to where things are with the progress of the new designed Shackleton Museum. So over the next 20 or so minutes, Mirador's team of designers will take you through the plans for the new revamped Shackleton Museum. Following that presentation, there will be a short presentation from Dr. Jim McAdam. Jim is the chairman of our Centenary Committee, and Jim will lay out some of the plans we have to celebrate the centenary of the Shackleton Rowett Quest expedition.
To this session of this year's autumn school. If you recall, in 2018, I made a short presentation about our plans to develop the new museum, the refurbishment of the existing heritage building in Athy on Emily Square. And today, 3 years later, I'm joined by my two colleagues, Mo Pavine and Roland O'Flaherty, and we're going to give you a little preview of what we've been working on for the past few months. The project is at advanced detailed design stage, and we're hoping to start construction early next year. So hopefully by the time the next autumn school comes, we'll be able to give you some a preview of progress on the ground. So without further ado, I'm going to give you a little overview of the building itself. You may be familiar with the building already. Many of you have been in Athy for previous autumn school. So you may be familiar with this view in particular of the outside of the building and the main entrance here facing Emily Square. So this hasn't changed here, but the big change, and you may remember this from my talk 3 years ago, is the addition of the extension on the south of the building there, which consists of an iceberg structure. And this structure basically is going to be installed with a big old concrete wall from the 1980s stands at the moment. So that wall is going to be removed, and this ice structure is going to be added here to provide access to the first floor here. You can see through the stairs. So we'll give you a little tour of the building itself, starting by the ground floor. Coming from the front, you have the main entrance area here to the north of the building, and to the side here we have a secondary entrance. So that secondary entrance here is going to be used in the evening to service cinema on the side and a cafe area. More about this shortly. I'm just going to give you a little view of the overall ground floor here. So you can see that run through here from the entrance right over to the ice structure is a free open space here. In that open space, we have firstly the little welcome area here with glass partition. Following this, we have a retail area. In the retail area here, we also have our reception desk in the middle. That space here is basically our free space for visitors. There's no ticketing involved to access this area, and same for the cafe. And you can see there to the east of the building, where that green table here, we have succession of 3 rooms, and these rooms will carry the medieval story of Athy, and this is going to be free for visitors to access as well. So that whole middle section and the side are all free for access, and you can just about see the little barriers here. So this is demarking the start of the paid experience to the rear of the building. Most of the Shackleton story would be told upstairs, and Roland will tell us more about that shortly. But we're starting this Shackleton story at the back of the building here and into the shard. With some key artifacts you see here. We have the old Arl Johnson car. We have the James Caird replica here, which Seb Coulthard built and designed. And we have our cinema entrance here. So if we go back to the start here, Mook will be talking to you about the visual style of the exhibition firstly, and then Ronan will follow with the themes that are actually being interpreted here on the ground floor. So Mook, if you want to take it over here with the first panel, which is our intro panel before we actually enter the exhibition area.
So as we enter the arcade area, obviously the first image that we see is of Shackleton, who is the main star of the show. And you can see from the color palette here that we were very much inspired by the ice flows. And this theme, the theme of ice flows and ice architecture, is actually carried on not just in the architecture of the building through the shard at the back, but also the architecture of the furniture within the building, the designs of the furniture. So the reception desk, various signage upstairs, it follows a sort of an ice shape. You can see as we progress into the building there, on the right hand side, we've got large glass perspex panels, which again have frosted perspex on the front, and they're translucent. You can see an image behind them, and within them they have screens. So here we get a better look and idea of the actual layout of how the information is presented to the visitor. So we went for something very clean, quite simple. It conveys the information very well.
As Mook mentioned there, the style of the exhibit and the graphic design follows the architecture, and obviously is inspired by Shackleton's epic stories. In terms of stories, Ronan, if you want to talk us through all the elements on displays here, starting maybe by what will be on displays in the transparent panels Mook mentioned earlier here.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Mark. The whole museum here is about Shackleton himself. So the very first thing I want people to hit is the story of Shackleton when they step into this particular space. But you also want to put them into context. So what we have here in the main gallery, and this gallery downstairs, this is a free area that people can circulate around. So we introduce people to the whole question of why the poles. Why were people looking to get to the poles in the first place? What drove the heroic age of exploration? And who are the main players in this? And we touch on some of those on the right-hand side in those particular panels that Mook was describing there. As you progress through this particular area, you'll pick up different elements of the story. As you pass through it, you'll actually be picking up the main part of the Shackleton tale itself. We introduce it directly to Shackleton himself. We have a cinema on the right-hand side instead of a usual AV, because we thought that'd be a nice touch, because the cinema was so important for Shackleton at the time, and the whole question of fundraising, of communicating with the public. So what we've created there is a 1920s cinema, and we've named it the Athy Picture Palace because it's a nice reference back to a very famous cinema in Athy town itself. So the whole thing will be set up like a 1920s cinema, and in that space there we'll be showing actual footage from the expeditions. But also we have the ability there to go and show maybe documentaries as well about the poles today, about some of the bigger issues that we have, or for special showings during the evening. In the main area there of the shard, we have key artifacts, as Mark has explained it earlier to us there. So we have the Arvel Johnston car, and all of you will know that that's a car of the type that Shackleton brought with him on his expedition on Nimrod, adapted for the ice purposes. And then of course we've got the James Caird replica, and all these are teasers for the story that's above. And beside us there on the left hand side we can see some more teasers, because in there we're going to have a display of key artifacts, and each of those is going to tell a little bit of the story that you're going to find out more upstairs, and they're pointers for people as well to find that. On the east side of the building is a special exhibition. It's not anything to do with Shackleton himself, but it's a really important exhibition, and it turns around this extremely famous and important artifact that the museum has been really fortunate to get, and that is the stone table of the Earls of Fitzgerald. This is the earliest piece of Renaissance art anywhere in Ireland. It's a remarkable artifact, and we're using that to go and tell us that particular story of the Fitzgeralds themselves. So there's a suite of rooms in here which introduce you to the background, to Athy, to the town where Shackleton himself would have known so closely from his childhood, and also to some of his own ancestors. Shackleton himself, they have very strong Kildare roots and Quaker roots, and we'll touch on that as well, the medieval aspect of Athy, but building up to the arrival of the Quakers and indeed the Shackleton family themselves. And then we move back out, and we're into the main Shackleton story, and we head upstairs for that experience. What we're trying to do for the general visitor who's not familiar with Shackleton is, first of all, set him into context, in the context of the early 1900s, and in the context of the heroic age of exploration. And downstairs, we had picked up the whole theme of why were people going to the poles in the first place, and what did they find when they got there. And up here, we're showing, well, how did they actually get there in the first place? And that was just by ship. And how did they travel across the terrain when they arrived there? Which in many cases was by man hauling, which is what we were dealing here with the sled, the Nimrod sled, and showing people just how hard it is to go and travel hundreds and hundreds of miles across the ice, pulling a sled of that particular weight, particularly when your dogs have died and your ponies have died and there's only you left to go and pull it. So we're setting some of the scenes here on this, and we're giving them the opportunity. There's a nice little surprise feature through those telescopes. People look through telescopes expecting to see what they see outside the window, but they won't. They'll be looking back in time and looking back in space. They'll be looking back to Antarctica of 100 years ago when they look through those particular telescopes. And that again is giving them a question of movement and a sense of place. And then we want to take people on their journey with Shackleton. All Shackleton's life is about a journey. It's a journey from Ireland across to England. It's a journey from childhood to marriage. It's a journey from Britain to the furthest points of the globe and the South Pole, and attempt on the South Pole itself. We want you to join Shackleton on that particular journey. So the first stage deals with his early life here in Kildare, and then in Dublin, and then in London. And then we move on to his relationships with women, the really important relationship of all with Emily, the most important one of that, but also his growing sense that he wants to do something with his life. He wants to achieve something, and this is where the question of the exploration of the further reaches of the globe comes into it. So we introduce the story of discovery of Captain Scott, and we introduce the story of what you will find in Antarctica itself. What's it like to be there in Antarctica? So that second room is going to tell you all about what it was like to live there. How cold was it? How did they survive? What food did they eat? There's a variety of different things in here which we won't go into, but it gives you a sense of what life was going to be like for them. And then, as you say, we move you through several different expeditions. And each of the expeditions, we have key artifacts. So we have the harness. Shackleton's own harness that he used for drawing the sled. We have the biscuit saved from Endurance. We have that on display in the Endurance display. We have a number of other key artifacts that we want people to share. So in here, there's plenty to see, to do. There's plenty of material, and there's an opportunity to delve deeper and deeper into the story. We really major on the story of Endurance. That's the one that people are very familiar with. We major on that. It's the one, I suppose, which in many ways made him a legend. Nimrod made him famous. Endurance made him a legend.
So we're using the existing model of the Endurance that's currently at the museum and trapping it in ice as per the famous footage there. So the footage will be protected behind it, so you will be able to see it being crushed in ice, being destroyed as the crew make their way to the ice floe, which is the next section here. So visitors will be able to reenact that journey from the Endurance, the model is saving again, over to the ice floes here, which is the passage through. And this is consisting of a series of interactive floor projections, because it has to be said the whole building will be wheelchair friendly as well. So that section here is on flat ground with straight access to the emergency exit, but we're turning it into an exciting space by having the interactive floor. So some of you may have seen that, where we have sensor keeping track of visitors' movement, and those sensor activate movie clip matching the movement. So as your foot actually presses down on the floor, we might have a penguin swimming underneath. We might have ripples coming off the ice floe. So it will be a very tactile environment here. Just moving on to the same room. the next room, sorry. So after the journey to the ice floe, which one will talk to in more detail in a minute, we're climbing on board. You can see the front of the James Caird here, and this is an immersive video projection there with videos being projected onto 3 walls. So you will really get a sense of what it was like to float on the ocean in the cold with the high seas surround you on 3 sides, or surrounding you on 3 sides there. Moving on to the next room, we're making progress. We're back onto dry land, and in this section here, World War I still rages in Europe. We have a lot of artifacts relating to that period and to Shackleton getting ready for the next expedition, and his last one, which is the Quest. The Quest, of course, being the main story of this exhibition in Natai, because as you all know, we have the original cabin in which he died. So we wanted to put the cabin really center stage and have it placed in the middle of the building there. And then when we started measuring up and installing the cabin, we realized quickly that the actual width of the room is the same width as the Quest, as the ship. So we started building some elements around that. So you can see the railing there, you can see the front of the ship, and we're trying to provide visual cue as to the size and the decors of the Quest here. So the front cabin, which we'll be reconstructing here, not exactly to scale. We had to try to adapt to the building itself in terms of its length here. But this front cabin will be used to give visitors an overview of the Quest expedition. I'll try to give you the money shot here through the corridor. So as you come out of the World War I experience, you can see the Quest railing at the back, and there's going to be some footage projected onto the wall here. So this is existing footage of icebergs passing by from the Quest expedition here. So as you progress through this space and turn around, you will very quickly realize that you're actually on board of the Quest here. So here we go. You can see the ropes there going up, the rope ladder going up to the mast, which will be placed in this location here. And this provides the ideal space to interpret the crow's nest, which is currently at the museum here. Moving along the deck of the Quest here, towards the back, we're approaching the cabin, Shackleton's cabin here. So you can see that we've added steps in front of the cabin. So obviously this is quite a poignant moment, and we want to give visitors an opportunity to reflect on the death of Shackleton, and by literally facing the cabin in which he died. So people can take time to sit down here. You can see there we have little small touch screens where people can access footage of his funeral and his burial there while looking into the cabin. The cabin is being kitted out by Sven, our conservator, at the moment, and he's adding all the accessories and everything that would have been present at the time. Finishing this section here, we'll have a legacy section. The mezzanine floor is actually placed exactly where the bridge of the Quest would have been, and this gives fantastic views back down onto the Quest. The mezzanine gives us an opportunity, like Ronan said, to bring the poles to the present, and there are a few elements there on display on the top floor. You can see all the graphics, blue panels here. We have a touch screen here with interpretation. We have a live feed there with some of the bases, the stations in Antarctica, to bring that live element to the museum here. You can see the snowcat prop here in the middle. This is covering some of the more recent expeditions of the 1950s, represented here by this vehicle. You can see, just about to see the screen inside of it there. We'll have a short documentary. The structures at the back here, you can see 2 frames. These frames are there for schools and groups to take advantage of. Sorry. So if you have, say, a school doing a special project on climate change, for instance, they could design their own panels. So this is quite a flexible area there. And this is perhaps where we'll be hosting traveling exhibitions as well, the likes of which are on display in the museum every year in Natai. So this concludes our tour of the museum. We hope to see you again next year at the next autumn school and to actually bring you through the building physically this time.
That's a fantastic synopsis of the plans for the museum in the next year or two. And I think we've seen lots of very positive comments about that as well. And just to answer a few comments made there on screen. Annika, thank you very much. You're very kind. We're glad you've enjoyed the day as well. And hopefully we've given you lots of things to think about in terms of the Antarctic explorations of Shackleton. Who else do we have there?
Yeah, so Aidan O'Sullivan is just saying it's been a very exciting day for him. Thanks, Aidan. That's great. Glad to put something exciting in your life.
Yeah, Siobhan Park, we've seen you quite a few times today, Sean. You've been very engaged with the comments and the lecture, so thanks for that as well.
Okay, David talks about the Tom Crean statue and so on. So yes, lovely statue. And of course, we have the Mark Richards statue as well of Shackleton outside here. So on your way to see Tom Crean, you can always take a look at Ernest Shackleton. James?
Annika, yeah, great to hear from you there as well, and glad to hear we're going to inspire you to do more work yourself on writing and researching about Shackleton.
Yeah. And Annika, again, thank you. That's great, yeah. So Donald Lamont, I see. So Donald, who has been here, and we know Donald very well. We'd consider him a friend. Hopefully he considers us similar. That's very exciting. Should we be in touch about the museum and how we might be able to incorporate imagery and so on if the wreck of Endurance is discovered next year? And I think Donald is involved in that whole project to search for the wreck of Endurance, which is very exciting. So certainly, Donald, we can talk about that straight after this if you want. But certainly, we'd love to be in touch. And thanks very much for the suggestion. That's just really good.
Make sure to join us for Virtual Point on later on. I know you like a glass of water yourself of an evening, so be there for that too.
Okay, so Judy Robertson, wonderful day. Well done to all. Said by several today, Italian and scholar. It's brilliant. Yes, well, Judy, certainly, please do come and please do visit. It'd be lovely to see you.
Brad. Oh, yeah, sorry, Brad. Yeah, of course, we had Brad gave his presentation on his new book there this afternoon. Thanks, Brad. Glad you enjoyed it.
Where are the offices, storage, and most importantly, the library?
That'll be on the second floor of the museum. That wasn't dealt with there in the presentation, but that'll be on the second floor of the museum. Rob, there's provision made for that.
And David Herzl, this immersive museum redevelopment is just amazing. So completely thought out from a wealth of possibilities. Well, no, I'm glad you think so. We certainly think so. We think the Mirador team and as part of the overall project being led by the council involving the Heritage Company here and OBFA Architects, certainly the work is going into it, and we really hope it can be realised in the sort of vision that's outlined.
John Tynan, thank you for your kind comments. John, you've been with us since the very start this morning, so thanks for that. Great to hear from you.
Oh, Mark McLean, incredible amount of work. This Point Museum, congratulations to all involved. Superb, enjoyable day of lectures and engagement. That's fantastic, Mark. Thanks very much for that. And we'll see you at the Virtual Point, maybe.
Jonathan, you've been a great supporter of the museum for the last couple of years. We're very pleased to have been able to display for the last 20 years the Shackleton sledge, which Jonathan kindly has loaned to the museum. And that'll be a very important exhibit in our new museum as well. And you've been very much engaged with the data. Thanks for that, John. Great to hear from you.
Siobhan Parker, and again, Siobhan, I think we've heard from you a few times, so thanks for keeping in touch. Can you put that up?
Sorry.
Yeah. This is ahead of us. Last day, just retired and see myself having. All right, okay. Okay, well, listen, that's brilliant. That sounds like you're setting off on your own exploration. So we hopefully will see you sometime. Thanks very much.
I see a comment there as well from Maria Pia Casarini, all the way from Italy. Maria lectured here many years ago with her husband, Peter Wadhams. Delighted to see you're in touch with us there, Maria. Hope all is well with you.
Okay, and one more then, Alan Wakefield. Love the idea of recreating the upper deck of the Quest around the original cabin. Yeah, no, listen, that's great. I think when we all saw that, it was just a wow moment, really, of this is the way to do it. So again, glad you think so as well, Alan. And hopefully you'll come to visit it when it's there, or maybe even beforehand. So thanks very much.
I see one more comment there from Mary B. Deavy, who's a very long-term supporter and friend of the Shackleton Museum. Thanks for that, Mary. I know that she misses terribly the event here, Kevin, because she's very much an important part of the
Absolutely, yeah.
the event itself, and she often features in the local press, doesn't she?
She does. I think she may have had a recent birthday as well. Is that right?
That's right. I think
Yeah,
she was
so
49 and a half again.
great. Okay, so Mary, thanks for your message.
Happy birthday,
and
Mary.
There's always room for you in photographing the local papers. Okay, so are you going to add the Rio extension?
That's Jan, I think.
And I am a bit not sure of what that question is.
You've got to clarify that for us, Jan. We're not quite sure what you mean by the Rio extension.
Yeah.
We'll have a go at it, though.
Yeah, if you have some ideas, Jan, please let us know. I mean, there's room for everything still.
Lovely to hear from Eugene
And
Furlong. Eugene was a key man in securing the cabin for the museum, a very important supporter of the whole cabin restoration project. And great to hear from you, Eugene. And I think we'll have an event involving Eugene later, early next year, which I think Jim might touch on later on in his presentation.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we're ready to go with. So firstly, look, thanks very much for your engagement during the day and for all those messages. It's great to us here, as I say, we're talking to a camera, so it's brilliant to see that we have got a good presentation across to people and so on, and that people have enjoyed the day. So we're going to click into Jim McAdam now, who's chairing our Shackleton Centenary Committee, and Jim is going to give us a run through some of the items that we've planned for this coming year, which is the centenary year.
We're very pleased to welcome you along to this virtual Shackleton event today. What I just want to talk to you about is how we in Athy are going to commemorate the 2022, which is a very significant date, obviously, because it's the centenary of the death of Sir Ernest Shackleton. We've taken this very seriously, obviously, because it's a huge event for Athy, and because Shackleton was obviously born here in 1922, and we're here commemorating his centenary. So earlier in the year, we set up a committee, and we've been busy working throughout the year, meeting regularly and planning and organising events for how we could really make this a special year and a hugely special event to commemorate Sir Ernest Shackleton. And our approach really is to raise awareness of Shackleton locally, nationally and internationally by dedicating 2022 as a Shackleton year. A logo is very important to commemorate that year, obviously, and we put a lot of thought into what sort of logo we would have. We didn't want anything jazzy or colourful because really this is a solemn occasion. We're commemorating the death of a relatively young man. Therefore, that's, that is a serious, solemn event and of a very significant polar character. We based our logo around a compass because there's obviously a strong nautical link through the whole of Shackleton's life and of all his achievements. And then, of course, we know we have to have a polar connotation. So we've used the south-north at the end of his name to really represent, if you like, the polar interest. Then thinking of a sort of a slogan for in the banner, really the quote that Shackleton wrote himself in his last letter from the quest to John Quillerowit, one of the funders of the quest expedition: "Never for me the lowered banner, never the lost endeavour." And that's taken from that letter. And we feel that's a perfect summary of his own driving spirit by Shackleton himself, and expresses a similar sentiment to the lines from Browning inscribed on his headstone in the Sealers Cemetery in South Georgia. So that's our logo. And I would just say too, for this centenary year, we would like to freely offer license to use this logo to any other organisation in relation to the Shackleton centenary. The only stipulation we have, of course, is that it remains unaltered, that its use is not primarily for monetary gain, and that the Shackleton Museum in Athy is credited where appropriate. So contact the museum if you want to use that logo appropriately to commemorate Shackleton. So, as I said, we've been busy through the year planning a series of events, and already we've started. Our first event was in mid-September, as near to the setting off of the Quest expedition on the 17th September 1921. Virtually 100 years later, we had a Shackleton commemorative event in Athy, where we had a walk from Kilkea, and we had a whole series of events just to raise the profile of Shackleton and to kick off, if you like, this year of commemoration. And that was very well attended and attracted a lot of attention and interest. And really the next thing I think you're going to see coming up is an exhibition we have organised to be presented in the library in Athy, the lovely library that there is there. And this really is a very significant event for us because it represents really our first and a very major link with one of the most iconic Shackleton museums in the world, the South Georgia Museum. And through this, we have established a very firm and positive link between Athy and South Georgia. And the South Georgia Museum has agreed to let us use their Shackleton's Last Quest exhibition. And that exhibition marks the centenary of the Quest expedition and really what is considered the end of the heroic era of polar exploration. So they've let us use their exhibition, which focuses on Shackleton's final resting place and the significance South Georgia played in that story. And that will be exhibited in the library in Athy over the next 3 months from the middle of November. Then another very significant event which has happened, and this also is linked, of course, to our link with the South Georgia Museum. We have managed to persuade All Hallows Church in London to let us use the barrel, in effect, which was the Quest's crow's nest, as you can see in the picture in the left. And that barrel has been exhibited for many, many years in All Hallows Church in London. And thanks to patient negotiation between ourselves and the South Georgia Museum, we've been able to actually acquire the museum, the barrel, to be shared between both museums. And we in Athy now have the barrel, and there's Clem and Frank just with it at this moment in the Shackleton Museum in Athy, and we will share it. Eventually it will go to South Georgia and it will be shared between us as a shared exhibit, which is really wonderful for us as a museum to be at that level, to achieve an exhibit like this and to be able to share and use it. So that's already on display, so get along to the Heritage Centre, to the museum in Athy, and have a look at it because it's there already. A great start to our commemoration events. Then some of the very significant events we plan for 2022, the commemoration year, if you like, in the Quaker Museum in Ballatour on the 15th of February 2022. We're going to have a talk on Shackleton, his birth and Quaker connections. And through our good efforts, we've been able to arrange a reprinting of Jonathan Shackleton, John McKenna's fine book on Shackleton, an Irishman in Antarctica, long out of print. And that's going to be reprinted and it's going to be launched on that day. So that will be a really memorable day on the whole year to commemorate Shackleton. We also recognise the importance of polar philately and of stamps and raising the awareness to people, if you like. So we've had a look at and been hopefully successful in contributing to commemorative stamps issue on Shackleton. As many of you maybe know, earlier this year, Anne Post published a series of 4 stamps on polar explorers. On this one, Shackleton is mentioned with Iceman. There you can see him listed down on the bottom right. But also we have been negotiating with the South Georgia government through the Falkland Islands, where the Commemorative Stamp Committee sits, and we have made representation to them. They're producing a 4 stamp issue early next year, and the Thai contribution, or the recognition of Shackleton's birthplace and his Irishness will be reflected in the first of those 4 stamps, thanks to our efforts. So that just another way that we will be getting the name of Thai out there and getting the just reflecting the sort of the Irishness of Shackleton, which we want to strongly recommend. And we're over this year, we planned that we have been working hard at building our links, Shackleton links, with other museums across the world, really. Our friends and neighbours in Tralee in County Kerry, which of course were near the home of Tom Crean, closely associated with Shackleton. Crean and Shackleton were polar explorers together. Crean played a huge part in Shackleton's leading of the endurance expedition. And it's really right and appropriate that we should have strong links with the museum in Tralee. The Fram Museum in Norway, one of the leading polar museums in the world, we're closely linked with them. We have very close links with the Falkland Islands Museum through several of our members visiting there and presenting there. And we've built up the link there because Shackleton, of course, visited the Falklands, and from there he mounted his attempts to try and rescue the endurance expedition. We have strong links there. And then now this year, finally cementing that excellent link, the whole length of the Atlantic, of our links with the South Georgia Museum. So those links with other museums. Athy is a small museum. The Shackleton Museum is a small museum, but it's going to punch above its polar weight by its links it's have with these other key museums in worldwide. Then the other events that we plan, we're going to have a book of commissioned essays on Shackleton related topics. We're going to publish that during the year. We've already commissioned some of those. We plan to have an ecumenical service in Athy in March 2022. There will be a special, because Shackleton, as we know, was related to the Quaker faith, but we plan to have what will be as I say, an all faith service in Athy in March. Then there will be a special issue of Nimrod next year, the journal of the Ernest Shackleton Autumn School. There will also be a reflective radio program called Shackleton Endures, which will look at the deeper traits of Shackleton through music, writing, and poetry. Those are things which, of course, we know are close to Shackleton's heart. And those will be broadcast on Irish National Radio and RTE Lyric. Then through the year, there'll be liaison with journalists and presenters who we've already established good relations and strong bonds with, and who recognise the importance of this Shackleton centenary year, really through our own efforts to generate articles on Shackleton's centenary in local, national, international media. And that will be both traditional and new. Things like seascapes and so on will feature, we will ensure that they feature Shackleton throughout the year. Then we will organise a lecture series which will continue from virtual Shackleton this year right throughout 2022. And then I'm really happy to announce we've put a lot of effort in and achieved huge support to actually commission a documentary on Shackleton the person. And that will be by the renowned producer Shane Brennan of Moondance Productions, who produces many fine documentaries for RTE and other media. So we're really excited by that, and the work on that is already well underway. Then finally, we're over the year, we will progress the development of the Shackleton Museum in Athy. As you know, we would have hoped to have that really ready for 2022 to receive the cabin that Shackleton died in on the quest. But of course, the work has been delayed by COVID and other things. But it's ongoing, and we still plan to eventually create what will be, we feel, one of the world-leading museums to commemorate Sir Ernest Shackleton. And there's an artist impression of what the final museum will look like. And the cabin there shown on the left, which is being stored safely in Letterfrack, and the process of restoration is well underway, will be a central feature in that museum. So we invite you all to keep your eye on our website as named there, and to follow our progress through the year. And please sign in and participate in all the events that we have to commemorate the life and death of one of the greatest polar explorers of all time, Sir Ernest Shackleton. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks very much for that run through. And again, as Jim said, there are other events and things, so keep an eye on the website. And one thing I think arising from last year is progress on Ireland's accession to the Antarctic Treaty, thanks to a very engaged minister and government. So nothing material has happened yet, but we are very hopeful that something will. Going back to the previous questions, there was one about the the cabin additions in Rio. So that's been clarified. So thanks for clarifying that. And actually, yes, we have considered those for a presentation in Plymouth. We actually, using the existing piece of the cabin and the various literature and photographs, we've been able to do a layout of the cabin, and an extra piece had been added in Rio. So in talking to Mirador, they're looking at the possibility of marking the floor area, marking the deck area on the Quest, to show what the cabin was like, okay? And incorporating the Shackleton cabin, obviously, where it is, as you saw in the presentation.
And just to remind you all, every year for the last 15 years, we published our annual journal Nimrod, which reflects the lectures given the previous year. So that'll go to print in November sometime. But as of like last year, because people can't come to Athy, it's hard to order them, we'll make available for free a PDF copy of this year's Nimrod as well as last year's Nimrod. So that'll hit your inboxes in your email sometime in mid-November to end November, for those of you who registered previously with the Virtually Shackleton event.
Okay, and of course the finale, really, well, not the finale, because but the next
crowning
item,
glory,
the
of
crowning
the
glory,
glory.
what everybody's been waiting for all day, really. And there's some people have been trying to knock on the door of O'Brien's, but we will have our virtual pint starting at about 20 to 7. Okay, and so please do join us for that.
The virtual pint is open-ended, so you can stay as long as you want, as long as there are people there behind the virtual bar. But do bear in mind that 8 o'clock tonight we have the premiere. Live streaming is southwards on the Quest, okay? The first time this has been shown in almost 100 years in Ireland, so don't miss that if you get a chance to watch it. You would have received into your email inbox there within the last half an hour a link to that film, so check that out around 8 o'clock tonight. Okay,
so now it really is up to us to thank everybody, and I'm going to start with the presenters.
Well done, Kevin.
Not those who presented the lectures, not ours. But no, just we're really aware, and you, I know, are aware of the amount of work that goes into it, and particularly when you're doing it online as well. Normally, our presenters can come and we can show them the best of Irish hospitality and show them around and so on. That opportunity hasn't been there last year or this year, but people put in such effort to get their talks and presentations together. And again, we've had pre-records and rehearsals over the last 2 or 3 weeks. So it's really hugely appreciated, and it really makes the day come together so well. So thanks very much to all those who presented during the day.
I can just mention there a little apologies to our contributor, Meredith Hooper. Meredith was online today to come into our event, but technological problems arose at our end. She couldn't get into the event, but she was there prepped and ready to go. So thanks, Meredith, but we'll hopefully have Meredith here in person next year to present to the autumn school.
Okay, so there's Amanda who's kept us all in line and on time today, and Sheena who's been monitoring the social media and sending out the various emails in advance and so on. So thanks to them, thanks to the staff of the museum who are always here and helping and interested in what we're doing. And again, some of those contacts, if you want to follow up afterwards, you will be in touch with info@shackletonmuseum.com, and we'll take emails and so on from there.
If you have any feedback to give about the event in terms of the content or the delivery or the structure of it, we'd welcome that as well. We hope to be back to our normal autumn school next year, COVID permitting, but there may be a kind of a hybrid version of the event, I suppose, because obviously this has been very successful. We've been able to broaden our appeal to people all around the world with the live presentations, and also bear in mind as well that all these presentations will be available on our website from today onwards.
Okay, so I actually just remembering there's been a question about the maquette as well, and maybe we'll take a quick look at a maquette here. If I can take it over, it's a maquette of Mark Richards' fantastic statue, which is outside the building here. So definitely come and see the statue. If you're interested, there are still some maquettes left. It's a limited edition of 50, but they are going fast. So get in touch again with info@Shackleton Museum, and we can sort all that out. And I think then what's left really from Seamus and myself is to thank you all for coming along, for sending in your questions, your comments, for just watching. Hopefully we have made an enjoyable day for you, and hopefully maybe you have learned something, and it's something maybe that's important and that you'll remember. So from us, thank you very much for tuning in today.
And we invite you to wet your whistles in the virtual pub with us in the next half an hour or so. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.